How's it going, everyone? Dreg from Driven by Dreg here. In this week's video, we will not be interviewing anyone. We will not be updating the cars. We will be going over the top 10 drift cars to get into drifting with in 2024. It's not in any exact order. It's just 10 I've picked out that I think that are the best for drifting and starting to drift and just becoming a professional in drifting. Please note, a lot of these cars are very old. So most of them will have wear and tear or rust or blown bushings after a while because they're so old. And then the mileage as well might be very high. So let's just get right into it. So for number 10, we have the Mazda RX-7 FC variant. It was made from 1985 to 1991. It's mostly known for its unique rotary engine and its small boxy look. The rotary engine was called the 13B. It either came naturally aspirated or turbocharged from the factory. The horsepower for the NA variant of the engine is 200 to 220 horsepower and 180 to 200 foot-pounds of torque. It's pretty impressive for its just lightweight build. The car really gets around. It's very jerky. It's very sporty. It is a great first car to get into, but you don't really see them out on the track because they're very rare to find. The RX-7 FC came with a 5-speed manual or an automatic transmission. Now, while the rotary engines offer a lot of benefits, there are some downsides to it. First being the engine's complexity and the aftermarket support for it. Mazda was the only company that made rotary engines, so finding, let's say, if you need seals for it or you blew it up and you need to find a whole new engine for it, the aftermarket support is low. It's not very low, but it is low. And then the other one is the fuel efficiency, which rotaries are very known for sucking up a lot of fuel when high RPMs when you're doing drifting. You also want to look for cooling issues with the rotary because they sometimes can overheat. One of the major issues is just age related: rust, wear and tear, mileage, blown bushings, stuff like that. But every old car from the 80s, 90s are all gonna have those type of issues.
Here I found a 1988 Mazda RX-7 Coupe for 5.5K. It was driven 100,000 miles with a manual transmission. It's in pretty good condition. Like I said, you can find these for a pretty decent price in bone stock condition. And yeah, I do recommend FCs as a first car. They're definitely underrated.
Moving on to the next one on our list, on number 9, we have the Infiniti G35. The G35 is made from 2002 to 2007. It is supposed to be a luxury sports sedan, but it was also produced in a sport coupe model, which is known as the G35 Coupe. It was powered by the 3.5 liter V6 engine, the VQ engine series. It's very smooth. It's a very strong. It outputs a lot of power and torque, but it sounds like complete shit though. The VQ engine produced around 260 to 298 horsepower. It provided the G35 with pretty strong acceleration and respectable performance for its class. Either came with a 5-speed automatic transmission or a 6-speed manual transmission. The only downside to the car is it just sounds like a piece of shit because of the engine. Other than that, it's not really bad. It's got a pretty good aftermarket support. It's not that old. You can find them for pretty low mileage, pretty good condition. They won't be beat. And yeah. And then the other downside is that they're very popular in takeovers, which is, I'd say it's got a bad reputation for that. But other than that, it's a great chassis to start on.
Here's a 2004 Infiniti G35, listed for $6,000. It was driven 100,000 miles with a manual transmission. It's pretty cheap, judging because it's a coupe and has a manual transmission. It usually goes for a little more, but this is a pretty good find. It says he's got a clean title. This is a really great find, in my opinion.
Up next, we have number 8 with the Mazda MX-5. It was built from 1991 to 1997. The first generation, which is the NA, which typically featured a 1.6 liter inline 4 engine. And then the second generation MX-5, which is the MB, was from 1998 to 2000, continued with a 1.8 liter engine. Power is not that great. The 1.6 liter came from around 115 to 130 horsepower, while the 1.8 liter engine became with 128 to 140 horsepower. They're pretty sufficient for the size of the car because Miatas are very, very small, and it's very restrictive. If you're a short person, you can fit it. If you're tall, I would not recommend getting the MX-5 Miata. The Miata came with either an automatic transmission or a 5-speed manual gearbox. The automatic transmissions were less common, which is very good for drifting. So if you go out and try and buy a Miata, you'll definitely find one with a manual transmission. The aftermarket support is very good for this car. You can find turbo kits, you can find angle kits, you can find anything for this car. Even superchargers you can have on the Miata. It's very surprising about how much these Miatas aftermarket support have. And they're not just for drifting, they're for all around cars. They're great chassis. They're small, they're nimble, they're I wouldn't say fast, but they can be fast, and they're great traction. It's just a great chassis to drive on. The downsides of the car is, like I said, the low horsepower, but you can always engine swap Miatas. If you go on YouTube, you can always find a Miata with a fucking Hellcat swapped, or any kind of swap, 2JZ swapped, RB swapped, even K-Series swapped. You can find them. They're easy, and there's always aftermarket support for it. Another thing, of course, age-related issues, rust, blown bushings, mileage, you know, just the whole thing. And then another thing would be the Miatas are starting to get a little bit pricey for what it was a couple years ago. You could get these for like a good $1,000, $2,000 back like before the pandemic. Now they're rising to the $5,000 to $10,000 range, but you can still get a very good low mileage Miata under $10K.
Here's a 1995 Mazda MX-5 Miata for $3,000. It has almost 100,000 miles and comes with a manual transmission. It is in very good shape besides the convertible top, but other than that, everything looks in shape. Everything looks there. It's bone stock. It's still on the stock coilovers, so it looks like a damn monster truck. I'd say this is a great price for only $3K. That's pretty good. If you live in Michigan, go and get yourself this car.
Coming up on number 7, we have the Lexus SC 400. It was made from 1992 to 2001. It came with a 4.0 liter 1UZ V8 engine. It's a Toyota engine, so you already know it's going to be, I'd say, somewhat reliable. It produces around 250 horsepower and 260 foot-pounds of torque, which is very good for a car that size. It's like the size of a 240SX. It either came with a 5-speed manual transmission or a 4-speed automatic. Although it did come with a V8, the handling dynamics lean more toward the comfort more than just the sportiness. It's not that good, but hey, it's rear-wheel drive. It came with the V8. And the center of gravity, I would recommend it for a starting drift car, but I would not recommend any more than that. Age related as well, of course, like I said, rust, mileage, blown bushings, stuff like that. You can still find them for a good $5 to $7K.
Here's a 1993 Lexus SC400 Sport Coupe for $8,000. This is a little on the higher end, but it is a little lower mileage because most of these cars have around 200,000 miles. This one's got 130,000. It comes with automatic trans. You could always just manual swap it. It's in mostly stock condition. Actually, no, it is in stock condition. It looks like it's just been taken care of, just judging by the shine and the wheels and all that.
For number 6, the Lexus IS300 was made in it from 2001 to 2005. It was powered by a 3.1 liter inline 6, also known as the 2JZ. Talk about Supra. I'm just kidding. That's a complete wrong engine. It's very reliable, great performance. It pulled out 215 horsepower from stock and 218 foot-pounds of torque. Very exceptional considering that this car is a 4-door sedan. Either came with a 5-speed automatic with a manual shift mode or just a 5-speed manual transmissions, which are a little harder to find, but they're out there. Honestly, I wouldn't say there's many downsides to the car. I don't know much about the car, but I definitely would recommend it. I see them on the track a lot.
Now I'm looking at the Lexus IS300s here, and as you can see, a majority of them have 200,000 miles or more. If you find anywhere in the lower range, it will exceed the $10,000 limit. That's because these cars are in high demand. A lot of people want to drift them. They've got really good engines, but if you do end up getting an IS300, you probably have to get someone else's project. For example, this one with 140,000 miles, and obviously this guy has already started drifting the car. But hey, it might be good for you only because you could just buy this car and immediately go out on track. The guy's already put his money into the car to go drifting, and yeah. So definitely recommend the IS300. Just, you got to look out for gem pieces sometimes.
Up next for number 5, something I know a lot about, the Nissan 240SX. The S13 generations were made from 1989 to 1994. It initially had a 2.4 liter inline 4, which was the KA24E. It produced around 140 horsepower and 152 pounds of torque. The S14 generation, though, was made from 1995 to 1998. The S14 received an updated engine, the KA24DE, which just added an extra cam, depending on the model year and the trim levels. Car is very, very good for drifting, but there are some downsides to it. Like I said, age. Now, when I say age, 240s are very known for rusting, blown bushings, the fucking wear and tear, just being abused. Most of the time you either find 240SXs with no engine in them, completely rusted out, completely parted out, or just very high mileage. If finding a 240 with low mileage, no rust, hasn't been abused is very hard to find. And if you do find one, it is going to be very expensive. I'm going to say do not buy a 240 in 2024. Only because they're getting more and more expensive by the day. Back before the pandemic and all that, it used to be worth $1,000, $2,000. You can buy multiple of them. Today, they go for around $10,000. So I highly advise you do not buy a 240, but if you have the money, 240s are one of the greatest platforms to drift on of all time. Greatest aftermarket support. You can swap literally anything in them. You can do literally anything in them. They're NFD. You can actually see them in rallycross, track cars. They're very great chassis. They have a 55-45 weight distribution, which means 55 at the front end, 45 at the rear end. It's a great chassis, but I just don't recommend you buying one because they're expensive.
Here's a 1989 Nissan 240SX SE, 130,000 miles in a manual transmission. This is honestly the cleanest and the most stock one I could find with the lowest miles, for $7,000, which is pretty terrible. Looking at all the other cars, they were all either covered in rust, too expensive, too high mileage, parted out. It was awful, just awful. So this is literally the cleanest thing I could find as of today, as of right now. But there definitely, sometimes every month there's always that one car that pops up. It's a deal that's too hard to pass up on.
Number 4, we have the Scion FRS. Now, this is the basically triple twin sister of the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota GR86. But this one is the cheapest out of the three. It came with a 2.0 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. It was part of the FA20 engine family, developed mostly by Subaru and Toyota. It produces around 200 horsepower and has 151 pounds of torque. The FRS came stock with a 6-speed manual transmission, or it came with the optional 6-speed automatic transmission with paddle shifters. Very great performance. Got low center of gravity, great engine layout because it's a horizontal Subaru engine. Reliability on those engines though, pretty shit. I'm gonna say, if you do get a FRS and you blow it up, do not get the same engine. Replace it with something else. Other than the engine blowing up, I can't really think of any downsides.
Here's a 2013 Scion FRS with 90,000 miles and a manual transmission for $3,500. It's in pretty great shape. It's got aftermarket exhaust, but other than that, it seems stock to me. It's still on the stock coilovers. I guess it's got an aftermarket clutch as well. But I'd say this is a very good. I'd say this is a very good steal right here. I would buy this myself if I had the fucking money for it. Yeah.
For number 3, we have the Ford Mustang. Now, I don't know shit about Mustangs, but I know that they're great chassis for any motorsport you do. Rallycross, drifting, tracking, fucking drag racing. They're just one of the greatest cars out there because Ford has put so much research in them that they're basically unstoppable. Almost any of the Mustangs are great starting cars for drifting because of the center of gravity is almost 50-50, and the power output is pretty dang good. Even if you get the V6, it's still pretty dang good. It's still driftable. I don't see much problems with Ford Mustangs. They have great aftermarket support. Any part you need for a Mustang, you can find out there because there are so many dealers selling Mustang parts.
Now here's just a random Mustang I pulled, the 1998 just regular Ford Mustang. No idea if it's a V6 or V8. It's $4,500 and it's got 96,000 miles on it. Looks completely stock to me. I don't see much modifications to it. Yeah, just looking at the video here, it's completely stock. No one has touched this, and I bet if you get your hands on this, you could probably just go out on track and start doing donuts if you wanted.
For number 2, we have the BMW 3 Series. Now, I'm talking about the BMW E30, E36, and the E46. So the E30 was made from 1982 to 1994. It was offered either inline 4, inline 6 from either 1.6 to 2.5 liters. Either came with a 6-speed manual transmission or 5-speed automatic. The E30s are very, I would say, for its time, they are great cars. For modern time, they are very fragile. They lack power. If you give it love, if you give it a new engine, they are beautiful cars. They're beautiful, they're modified, they sound great, they have a very great history in a lot of things. Rallycross, IMSO racing, don't quote me on that. They're just great cars all around, just like the 240SX and the Mustang. You can either get the 2-door coupe or the 4-door sedan, but let me move on to the E36. Now, the E36 was made from 1991 to 1999. Either, like I said, came with inline 4, inline 6 engines. I would recommend if you're going to pick any of the BMWs, I would recommend the E36. There are a lot of people in FD that use E36s still, even though they're pretty old cars. They're almost the exact same as the E30, but the E36 is very stronger. The frame is a lot stronger. It's more modern. You're more likely to find a less fucked up one. To move on, we have the BMW E46, was made from 1998 to 2006. Same thing, inline 4 or inline 6 engines, either in a manual automatic transmission. The E46, I don't really know much about, but I know that they're just a more modern E36. I do recommend the E46 as a first drift car, but aftermarket support wise, I don't see it as of yet. Over time, as the E30 and the E36 start to go away and start to diminish, the E46 will take their places.
Here's a 1986 BMW 3 Series with 135,000 miles. When it comes to the automatic transmission, like I said, you could just buy it and get a manual swap right after. It's not that hard. This one is it's a 4-door, which both the coupes and the 4-doors can drift pretty good. It's bone stock. The interior is completely stock as well. It hasn't been tampered with. It's in pretty good condition for a car that's from 1986. I would recommend y'all getting this car. Here's a 1995 BMW 3 Series, so the E36 chassis. This one as well has not been touched. I just chose this one because it had low mileage. It's got 75,000 miles for only $3,000. I think that's pretty damn good for a starting drift car. 2005 BMW 3 Series. It's the E46 chassis with 133,000 miles with a manual transmission and it's around $4,000. You could probably get lower to 3.5K if you negotiate with this guy. It's bone stock. It's in okay condition besides the little bit of rust right there. But like I said, these are old cars. You're gonna expect rust on a lot of these.
All right, it's getting dark outside, so y'all can very silly. So let me just wrap this up real quick. For number 1, we have the Nissan 350Z. The Nissan 350Z is almost just like the G35, but just a lot more love built into it. It was made from 2003 to 2006. It came with the 3.5 liter V6 engine known as the VQ35DE. It came out with around 287 horsepower and 274 pounds of foot torque. Later models such as the 2007 to 2009 350Z. Got an upgrade to the VQ35HR engine, which increased the power from around 306 horsepower and about 268 pounds of foot torque. It's got very strong acceleration, sharp handling, and it's a very great driving experience all around. There's not really any downsides to it. It's got exceptional aftermarket support. For example, the Z1 Motorsports, that entire website's all about the Z's and all the Z chassis. The only thing you would have to do, get coilovers, not even that, you would just have to weld your diff and you can hop out on track immediately. Now, the one downside is it sounds like shit.
Here's a 2008 Nissan 350Z for $4,000. It has 132,000 miles and comes with the automatic transmission. Now, of course, it's a drift car. You're gonna have a project. So this right here shouldn't be that bad of a fix if you're making this just to drift and not for looks. But it is bone stock. Interior looks pretty good. The only thing that you'd have to do would just be fixing that roof and slapping in a manual transmission and welding your diff, and then that's all you need to do, and you can just go out on track, connect the corners, drift it perfectly. This is one of the greatest drift cars ever made.
Now, I guess I'll wrap up the video for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I am Driven by Dreg. You have watched this week's video. Take care. See you later.